You're listening to True Crime Arizona, the podcast.
Hi, everyone. Host Brianna Whitney here. For the past several weeks, we've brought you in-depth investigations into missing children cases in Arizona. They've been some of the most heartbreaking, yet eye-opening cases I've ever worked on as a journalist. Something all of them have in common is their involvement with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, known as NCMEC. To better understand how NCMEC works, I sat down for a one-on-one interview with Angeline Hartman, the media director for the center. I asked her specifically about the Mikelle Biggs, Jhessye Shockley, and Baby Gabriel cases and the center's involvement in each of them. She wants our listeners to know these cases aren't over. Take a listen. My first question when it comes to NCMEC is, when a case comes into the center, where does it go from there? I mean, what happens in terms of the process of starting to try to find the child?
When a case first comes into NCMEC, usually it comes in through the call center, right, or an email. And so from there, we figure out where it needs to go. And usually it ends up with a case manager assigned to that case. Right? And that case manager assesses what happens and what's needed in that case. And from there, that case manager can figure out what resources are needed, whether it's family support, media support, something else, how they can help law enforcement. And so really, we are the great connector, right? Because sometimes people have no idea what to do, where they just have this missing case, right? Whether it's a family member or a law enforcement agency. And when I say that, that they have no idea what to do, a lot of times it's their first time dealing with a case of this magnitude. And sometimes law enforcement agencies don't have any experience having a missing child in their community.
Especially maybe some of the smaller ones, smaller departments.
And it's really about just making sure that they have the right resources, the right tools, and they know, what's up to date and where to go, and to find things quickly. Because, any agency can figure things out along the way, but we're like the one-stop shop where here's all the things you need, right? When this happens, and we can do things fast, because we know that's what we do all day long.
What's the difference between what NCMEC does when there's a missing child case versus the police department or law enforcement agency that is physically looking for the child?
Well, law enforcement may only know what's happening in their community. And also, if we're talking about local law enforcement, they really only have the resources sometimes in their area. And we are national, so we can connect with, on federal and state levels. And we can also, we see the overall picture. We've had many times where a child is missing in, one part of the United States, and somehow it's connected to another part of the United States. And we've had, 2 or more cases connected, and you would never know that there was something there to connect those two without us in the middle.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
When you say there's a case manager for each case, what happens when or if that case goes cold or it isn't solved? Does that same manager stay on it? Is there a team that's developed to try to put more resources to it? What happens in situations, especially like these 3, Mikelle Biggs, Jhessye Shockley, Baby Gabriel, all of them are fairly cold cases at the moment. So where are they in that status of case manager assigned?
We usually have case managers who deal specifically with long-term missing cases. Now, that's not to say that a long-term missing case would automatically go to that case manager, or we wouldn't have a case manager who deals with long-term missing cases, because there are always exceptions. But we do have several case managers that deal specifically with long-term cases, cold cases, and that's a different kind of skill set. So, I think that's a good thing.
Can you explain that skill set that's needed for cases like that?
They look at the overall picture. They a lot of times they check in with, they're looking at the long haul, right? And they are dealing with law enforcement who sometimes, when they hit a brick wall, sometimes they need a fresh set of eyes and a fresh person to talk to. And our case manager can be that person who can say, hey, have you tried this? Or this just, is a new tool that another department over here is using. Have you considered this? Or we can connect you with this resource. We also have what's called cold case reviews, where we have select number of cases that go to a team of people, experts in different fields, that will take a deep dive into a case and look at it, from beginning to where it is now, and give their specific opinion from their specialty. And they get together for a few days and they compare notes and just give suggestions, and they work with the police department to figure out what has been done and what hasn't been done. And a lot of times those are the things that are needed when it comes to cold cases. So
cases don't go by the wayside at NCMEC. Even if they're older and unsolved, there is always somebody actively working on them.
For sure. And, our communications team, we kind of have the same thing. We take a look at cold cases and say, what is the best media strategy for this case? Because we know that the longer a case is out there, the tougher it is to get media exposure for that case. And media exposure can make the difference in whether or not a case is solved. And so we take a look at these cases and we say, hey, what can we do to bring media attention? Is it an anniversary video? Is it a blog where we talk to a family member? We try to find fresh, different approaches to, give the case attention, call in the media, or sometimes it's just a matter of letting the families know that we haven't forgotten them, that somebody's still thinking about their case.
Interesting you bring up the, media getting out there. If you started with the agency in 2013 and now we're in 2021, technology and media has evolved so much, even in the time you've been there. Can you describe how you guys have been able to utilize those changes, whether that's the popularity of YouTube or TikTok or different means or platforms to get those messages out there over the years?
Well, I would just say in general, social media has been a game changer for us when it comes to finding missing children. No longer do we have to rely on traditional media to pick up these stories. We can create our own content and put that content out there and have it shared over and over again and get that message out there. Families can do that. We can create the content and help families share their message. Because sometimes, as law enforcement doesn't always, want media attention. Or help create media attention in older cases. Sometimes the media doesn't cover certain cases, because they're old, because there may be no new development. And so for us, it doesn't matter. We use social media to help these families and help law enforcement, help call attention to these cases. And it has been I can't even put a number on it. All I can say is it's been a game changer.
Have you seen cases be solved because of this time and time again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No doubt. There have been many cases where people say, let me start that again. There's no doubt that children have been found because of social media. Over and over again, we've seen cases where people have called in and said, I saw that child's poster on, this social media site or, so-and-so. It's endless, really.
I want to talk a little bit about these 3 specific cases as well, and just the hardest parts about them in terms of NCMEC's involvement and where you guys see these cases going next. First would be Mikelle Biggs, and just for our listeners who will be listening to this, getting people up to date if they hadn't heard the podcast, she was 11 years old in Mesa, Arizona. She went outside with her sister. Her sister went inside for about 90 seconds, and in those 90 seconds, Mikelle went missing while she was waiting for the ice cream truck to come. And police believe that she was likely abducted, but they don't know by who, and she's never been found. In terms of Mikelle's case, what have been the biggest challenges, maybe the biggest hurdles for NCMEC in terms of your involvement with it?
I mean, in Mikelle's case, I just can't help but think about how things would have been so different if this case were to happen now, today. I mean,
cameras.
You know, there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
There's ring cameras. There's, traffic cameras. There's everything. And back then, in 1999, we were almost there. We're just on the cusp of it. And I think the key for this case is to make sure that her name stays out there. Her age progression stays out there. The case information stays out there, because you just never know. So many things could have happened in that case. And when people ask me, in some cases, do you think there's a possibility so-and-so could be alive and out there? Do you think it's, after all these years, but it's been so long? In this case, most definitely yes, because we don't know what happened. We don't know. And that's why we need to keep her case out there, not only in Arizona, but in different parts of the country, because she could be anywhere at this point.
Right.
And in order for somebody to see that age progression, a few things have to happen. Number one, we have to notice the age progression. We have to take the time to take a look at it. And then number two, the people in the community have to have that open mind to think, make that connection between her age progression photo of what she might look like now and her, that they could actually see her. And then to actually, if they know something, if they see something, to actually pick up the phone and say something. So all of those things working together have to be in full force for it all to work.
That's a great point, too, with these cases with kids. And years going by, I think people in their minds, they identify with those kids' pictures, right? They've been out for years. But you make a great point. They wouldn't look like that now. And so I think it's hard for people to get their mind wrapped around what they could look like. Is that why NCMEC tries to put out age progression pictures every so often to try to help people's minds kind of look at this new image of what this kid could be now?
Well, children change, so quickly, what they look like, how. And so under the age of 18, we do these age progression photos every 2 years. After that, we do them every 5 years. So we like to remind people that, yes, you're not looking for the child from before when this all happened in 1999. You're looking at what this child might look like now. And we also want to remind people that these age progression photos are a likeness. This is what this person might look like today. It's not an exact photo. So that's what people have to keep in mind too. That photo is supposed to spark some kind of recognition if you have seen that person.
Let's talk a little bit about the Jhessye Shockley case. That's a bit of a different case from these other two, just because authorities do believe she was killed by her mom. Her mom was convicted for first-degree murder. They believe her body is still in the landfill here, but they've never been able to find it. I think what sticks out to me in this case, just from me and my team investigating it, is that her family tried to keep her away from her mom, knowing she was going to be possibly in a dangerous situation, and authorities threatened to put Jhessye in foster care if they didn't give her back to her mom. Family members tried to check in. Mom made everything look okay when there were wellness checks or welfare checks. And it seems that, unfortunately, Jhessye and her siblings got caught in the middle of a situation where authorities just couldn't see what was going on. But it seemed like they had multiple times they could have.
You know, we've seen this so often. I mean, there's so many cases like this across the country where, you know, you look back and say, were there warning signs? Yes, of course there were warning signs. Should somebody have stepped in? Yes. And it's just so sad and frustrating because I remember when I was a reporter, 20 years ago, we were doing stories like this. And it doesn't seem like a lot has changed because it's still happening.
And then the Baby Gabriel case is probably one of the most...
But what I want to say, can I just say for
Yeah, go ahead.
For Jessye's case, you know, in her case, obviously her mother was convicted, right? And there was no... But Jessye's still missing. She was never found, right?
Right.
And so it's a little bit of a contrast because her mother's in prison. She had, you know, but we still at the National Center say Jhessye is missing. And so we often get the question of like, well, wait, you know, this case is closed, you know, mom's in prison, she's been convicted. Why do you still have her as a missing child? And I just want to say that this happens. There are other cases like this at the National Center. And the answer is simple. Until Jhessye is found, to us, she is still missing. So her poster is still out there. We still want people to look for her. You just never know. Things could change. You know, in 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, somebody could come forward with information. You just never know what can happen. And so it's important to keep her listed as a missing child because she is missing. She has not been found. And that's how we look at that at the National Center.
Thank you for adding that because that is really important. I think that's an important thing for listeners to know, too, is that just because a case is closed, if a child's not found, that doesn't mean it's a closed case to NCMEC. I mean, your objective is finding missing children or exploited children. Yeah. Baby Gabriel Johnson is the other case that we've focused on quite a bit, and that is a case that has a lot of twists and turns and oddities about it. Just bringing people up to speed. He was a 9-month-old baby here in Tempe, Arizona, and mom took him to San Antonio without his dad, Logan's, consent. And at first she told Logan she killed Gabriel, and then she claimed she actually gave him away to an unidentified or anonymous couple in a black market adoption. And what's weird about this is there was some odd kind of her trying to adopt Gabriel out situations prior to her even going to Texas. So it's definitely not impossible that that could have happened, but no one really knows if she did kill Gabriel or she did give him away. But it leaves the chance that he could very well still be out there and alive. In terms of NCMEC's involvement, I know you guys just created a new age progression photo of him. I know he's a very high-profile case. What part of this case is the most challenging when it comes to information of what you guys can sort to be true or not true, since there are so many different avenues of this case?
Well, that's just it. There's so much to this case, right? And I think it's been publicly said that there's also questions about who is actually looking for the baby Gabriel, right?
Yeah.
And so this is a tough one because it's obvious. Baby Gabriel is missing. And I think, you know, we have to remind people that it is a possibility that he is out there, that she possibly gave him to a family, gave him to, you know, who knows what. I get that it's also possible that something terrible happened to him. She says at one point she killed him. That is very possible. But the story has changed. and he has not been found. So for us, we have to remind people that it's not time to give up. No matter how much time has passed, there's still that possibility, and we all need to still keep looking. So please look at the age progression. Listen to all of the theories. Stay involved. This is a young baby, and it's just heartbreaking, really.
I think what makes this case, too, so frustrating, well, there's a plethora of reasons why, but in this specific case, if he was given out to another family, he wouldn't know who he was because he was so young, but now he'd be 12. And 12-year-olds are pretty good on computers with technology. I think there's some hope that he possibly on his own accord could discover who he is.
Well, we've seen that before.
We have. Is that possible for this case?
Of course. And what we've seen is that children who were abducted, were given away when they were infants, later grow up when they're 16, 17, 18, sometimes 21, when it's time for them to, produce paperwork, whether it's for a job or some kind of, or they're applying for college, whatever it is, sometimes they need certain paperwork, and that paperwork doesn't always match up. And at that point, they start asking questions. And they realize, there's something not right here. And so that could be the case here because we've seen it over and over again. It's really amazing.
I know it's hard, too, if people suspect he could be Dylan or Joe or somebody that they know, but neither Nick Mick nor police departments can just get a warrant and go test somebody for DNA on a suspicion of that, correct?
That's correct. But, here's the thing. You hear the saying, if you see something, say something. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just that simple. You don't want police wasting their time, but you also don't want to be the person who knows something and doesn't say anything, because that's just it. You could be the person who holds the key.
Is it possible all three of these cases could be solved?
Of course. Of course. And that's what we're here to remind people. It just takes one person. It just takes one person to bring home a missing child. We've seen it time and time again. What does it take? It takes people being involved. It takes people caring. And it takes people picking up the phone.
And people can call or email or send in tips to Nick Mick at any time?
Uh-huh. We are 24/7, and our number is 1-800-THE-LOST, 1-800-843-5678. Sometimes I think it's hard for people to find the courage sometimes to make a call, especially when they're unsure. But I would just encourage people just to do that because you just never know.
Last question. What do you want people who are listening to this to know about Nick Mick that maybe they didn't know before, maybe something that people could forget, or what do you want them to know about the work your agency is doing?
Well, I think people would be surprised to know that there are more than 700 unidentified child cases across the country that Nick Mick works on. So we're talking about, what does that mean? It means a child was found and we don't know the identity of that child. And those cases come to Nick Mick, and we have a special team that works on those cases and works hard to figure out their identity. And we put those, we create the images, we put the information out. And again, we can put the information out as much as possible, but people have really got to do their part and look at it, think about it, and make a move, share it, share the information. And we talked about social media earlier. That's key in getting the word out there.
Share, tweet, post, any of that can help.
We get people saying all the time, how can I help? How can I help? That's how you can help. Find out who's missing in your community. Go to missingkids.org. It's pretty simple. Just, type in where you live and find out who's missing in your community and keep an eye out. And then share that information, share that poster. And again, it just takes one person to bring home a missing child. You just never know if you're going to be that person.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's even been eye-opening to me too. I think it's just amazing the work that your agency does and the fact that there are missing child cases getting solved all the time. And there's still hope for these families, for these communities in these cases. So I appreciate you sharing your insight and knowledge into what you guys are doing behind the scenes, because I think it's some of the most important work that's out there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing.
True Crime Arizona, the podcast, is hosted by me, Brianna Whitney, and produced by Sergio Hernandez. It's a production of Arizona's Family, 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona. To watch the video version on your smart TV, download the free AZ Family streaming news app.
Asante came to TurboTax after graduating from culinary school and landing a job in the hottest kitchen in town.
My hands are full all day, every day. I love it.
Asante, as your TurboTax expert, I'll make your moves count, guaranteeing 100% accurate filing and your maximum refund. Sound good?
Yes, expert!
Switch to Intuit TurboTax and make your moves count. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Experts only available with TurboTax Live.